Zarkoth stood at the viewport of his command vessel, mandibles clicking in mild amusement as he reviewed the intelligence reports. The bipedal creatures from the Blue World claimed they could wage war without hibernation cycles, a biological impossibility. Every sentient species across the 17 sectors required deep restorative hibernation. It was a universal constant, necessary for neural function and cellular regeneration. Terran propaganda, he chitted to his second-in-command, Vriza. Their psychological warfare is primitive but creative. The War Council had laughed when the intercepted human communications mentioned continuous operations and around-the-clock combat readiness. Such boasts defied natural law. The Qu'lari Imperium had conquered 12 star systems by timing their offensives during their enemies' hibernation phases. All intelligent life followed the same pattern, periods of activity followed by necessary dormancy. The conquest of Earth will proceed according to standard doctrine, Zarkoth had declared to his generals. When the humans enter their inevitable hibernation cycle, we will strike. That was 8 rotations ago. The Qu'lari had lost 6 battle groups since then. The command center hummed with the nervous energy of exhausted officers. Tactical displays showed the advancing human fleet, again, always advancing, never pausing. "Impossible," whispered Vriza, her exoskeleton dull from fatigue. "We've monitored them for 17 consecutive cycles. Not a single human vessel has withdrawn for crew replacement or hibernation protocols." Zarkoth's inner membranes fluttered in agitation. They must rotate their crews, deploy long-range scanners to detect their supply lines and replacement transports. "We've tried, Supreme Commander," the intelligence officer responded, mandibles drooping with fatigue. "The humans don't rotate the same vessels, the same crews. They just continue." The concept was so alien that Zarkoth's translator implant struggled to find an equivalent term in Qu'lari language. "Contact the High Council," Zarkoth ordered. "Request immediate reinforcements." "The Council is in deep hibernation for another 12 cycles, Commander. Only the emergency protocol can initiate it." Zarkoth snapped, his patience worn thin by exhaustion. The Qu'lari battle doctrine relied on overwhelming force applied during critical windows when enemy forces entered hibernation. But these humans never provided that window. Their ships pressed forward, their communications chatter continued unabated, their tactical innovations evolved hourly. The unspoken truth settled over the command center. They were facing an enemy fundamentally different from any encountered before. 3 cycles later, the reinforcements arrived. Fresh troops eager for glory in the simple subjugation of the primitive Earth forces. General Zithmar strutted onto the command deck, his carapace gleaming and posture radiating energy. "I've reviewed your report, Zarkoth," he said dismissively. "Your forces simply lack discipline. These humans are using chemical stimulants to delay hibernation, nothing more. We'll break their lines with concentrated force, and their biology will do the rest." Zarkoth's antennae flattened against his head in warning. "With respect, General, you haven't faced them yet." The freshly arrived officer ignored the warning. 6 hours later, his elite strike force encountered human defenders at the gas giant's third moon. The battle lasted 9 hours, an eternity in modern space combat. Zithmar's flagship limped back alone, trailing reactor plasma. They fought differently in the 8th hour than they did in the 1st, the general reported, his mandibles trembling. "Adapted to our tactics in real time. No hibernation, no crew rotations. The same human commanders responded to each new strategy with evolving counters. It defies explanation." Zarkoth felt a cold dread settle into his thoracic cavity. "What of your forces?" "Destroyed. Our troops began making errors in the 6th hour. Reaction times slowed. Cognitive function diminished. But the humans," Zithmar's compound eyes dimmed, "they didn't degrade. Hour after hour they maintained performance. One human vessel took catastrophic damage, lost life support to half its compartments, and still continued fighting with undiminished effectiveness." The command staff exchanged nervous glances. All knew what awaited them, the approaching collapse of their defensive line as Qu'lari soldiers reached their biological limits. By the 14th cycle, rumors spread through the fleet. Some claimed humans were mechanical constructs disguised as biological entities. Others whispered of forbidden genetic engineering. The most terrifying theories suggested humans were something new in the galaxy. Life that had evolved without the universal constant of hibernation. In the command center, Zarkoth reviewed the latest tactical assessments. 3 more outposts lost, 2 supply convoys destroyed. The humans were learning their patterns, exploiting the predictable windows when Qu'lari crew efficiency dropped as hibernation needs approached. Supreme Commander, Vriza approached, her movements sluggish from extended wakefulness. We've intercepted internal human communication. The holographic display activated, showing human text translated by their systems. Fleet command to all vessels, maintain pressure. Intelligence confirms Quilk forces approaching critical fatigue. Standard human endurance advantage now. Primary tactical focus. Zarkoth felt his hemolymph run cold. They know. They've weaponized our biological necessity against us. Another message appeared. Forward elements report Qu'lari combat efficiency, dropping by estimated 18% per cycle. Casualties mounting on their side due to attention failures and response delay. Recommendation: continuous engagement, no respite. The revelation struck Zarkoth like a gravitational hammer. The humans hadn't been boasting, they'd been stating a biological fact. Their physiology operated on fundamentally different principles than every other sentient species. They don't hibernate, he whispered, the concept still impossibly alien. They just continue. The 19th cycle brought crisis. Qu'lari ships were falling back across all fronts, their crews functioning at dangerous levels of sleep deprivation. Medical officers reported hallucinations, psychosis, and complete neural collapse in extreme cases. In desperation, Zarkoth ordered rotating hibernation protocols. 1/3 of each crew permitted short hibernation while others maintained stations. It was dangerously insufficient for proper neural recovery, but the alternative was total collapse. The human advance didn't slow, if anything it accelerated as they recognized the vulnerability. They're targeting our ships during crew transitions, the tactical officer reported. Somehow, they know exactly when our personnel are at minimum capacity. Zarkoth stared at the battle projections, mandibles clicking rapidly in stress. Of course they do. They're studying us, adapting to our patterns while maintaining constant vigilance. No downtime, no recovery periods to exploit. A junior communications officer approached cautiously. Supreme Commander, we've detected unusual transmissions from human vessels. What kind of transmissions? Entertainment, sir. Music, fictional narratives, games of strategy and chance. Zarkoth's antenna twitched in confusion. During combat operations? Yes, Commander. And their mess facilities operate continuously. They consume small amounts of food constantly rather than proper nutrition cycles, and they ingest a dark stimulant liquid at regular intervals. The picture was becoming clearer and more terrifying. These humans didn't just lack hibernation cycles. Their entire existence was structured around continuous operation with minimal interruption. What manner of evolutionary path creates such beings? Vriza wondered aloud, her voice hollow with fatigue. Zarkoth had no answer. The galaxy had never seen anything like them. By the 23rd cycle, half the Qu'lari fleet was in emergency hibernation, their vessels hidden in the shadow of a rogue planetoid. Those still fighting were operating on stimulants and biological enhancers. Temporary measures with devastating long-term consequences. Zarkoth hadn't hibernated in 11 cycles. His chitin was dull, his movements erratic. The medical officer had warned of imminent neural damage, but there was no time. The holographic display showed human vessels methodically securing system after system. They had penetrated the outer defense perimeter and were approaching the main Qu'lari supply depot. "We've lost the Mordenar sector," Vriza reported, her voice cracking from exhaustion. The garrison commander executed emergency hibernation protocols for his entire command. 3,000 troops, all down simultaneously. The humans walked in, unopposed. Zarkoth's mandibles clacked weakly, and still no sign of human hibernation cycles. "None, Commander. We've observed the same human commanders making decisions for 23 consecutive cycles. They show minimal performance degradation. Some even appear to improve their tactical responses over time." A terrible understanding dawned on Zarkoth. The High Council had ordered this invasion based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their enemy. They had encountered a species that defied the universal constant, beings that could remain conscious, alert, and adaptive without the neural reset of hibernation. "We've made a grave miscalculation," he whispered. "The humans aren't merely resistant to fatigue. They've evolved as continuous predators." The implications were staggering. Every Qu'lari battle doctrine, every strategic principle developed over millennia of warfare, relied on exploiting the inevitable hibernation cycles all sentient species required. Against an enemy without such cycles, their entire military philosophy collapsed. The 25th cycle brought the end. Human vassals surrounded the command carrier. Zarkoth's remaining ships had withdrawn to protective formations, but crews were operating at less than 40% capacity. Mass hibernation had begun spontaneously on 3 destroyers, the biological imperative finally overriding chemical suppressants and military discipline. "Incoming transmission from the human flagship," the communications officer announced. The view screen activated, showing a human female in a simple uniform. Her eyes were clear, alert, focused, a stark contrast to the haggard Qu'lari bridge crew. "This is Admiral Chen, of Earth Federation forces. Your fleet is surrounded, your crews incapacitated. We offer terms for your surrender." Zarkoth struggled to focus his compound eyes. "You've studied us, learned our weaknesses." The human's expression remained neutral. "We observed that your species requires periods of complete inactivity. We adjusted our strategy accordingly." "How?" Zarkoth's translator struggled to form the concept. "How do you maintain function without hibernation?" For the first time, the human's expression changed. Confusion, then understanding. "You mean sleep?" she asked. "We sleep in short intervals, typically 6 to 8 hours per 24-hour cycle. Our crews operate in shifts, maintaining continuous operations." The revelation hit Zarkoth like a supernova. The humans did rest, but in brief, rotating periods that never left their collective capability diminished. While individual humans slept, others remained alert. Their vessels never went dormant, their command structure never paused, their war machine never hibernated. "Your terms?" Zarkoth asked. Knowing the war was lost before it truly began. Immediate withdrawal from all occupied territories, return of all prisoners, reparations for damaged colonies. Zarkoth's antennae drooped in defeat. "And if we refuse?" The human's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sent a shiver through Zarkoth's exoskeleton. "Then we continue. We can maintain this operational tempo indefinitely, Commander. Can you?" The question needed no answer. The Qu'lari couldn't match an enemy that never fully rested, never fully disengaged, never provided the exploitation window their entire military doctrine required. As Zarkoth transmitted his surrender, a final terrible truth dawned on him. The galaxy had always feared the discovery of a truly alien intelligence, some inconceivable form of life operating on principles beyond comprehension. The Qu'lari had found exactly that, but not in some distant, mysterious nebula. They had found it in humans, relentless, adaptable creatures that defied the natural order with their continuous existence, predators that never truly stopped hunting, the nightmares that never sleep.